Every one of us is here on, you could call it different terms. I usually call it a tour of service. So we're here on a tour of service. Wherever we have been placed, it's because that source of love is able to radiate love through us. As uncomfortable as our experiences sometimes are humanly, there's always this way that the divine is able to be of service through us, whatever it is that we have experienced. Good morning, welcome, 1,000 welcomes to you all. And we are meditating today on the subject generosity and prosperity. And this is part of our series on full heart living. And so the truth is that when we remember, we reconnect with that pure love energy within ourselves, we can't help but realize that our very being here is a gift. I know it doesn't always feel that way. So if you can, just play with a couple of perspectives that shift and expand our awareness. Every one of us is here on, you could call it different terms. I usually call it a tour of service. So we're here on a tour of service. Wherever we have been placed, it's because that source of love is able to radiate love through us. As uncomfortable as our experiences sometimes are humanly, there's always this way that the divine is able to be of service through us, whatever it is that we have experienced. I think some other people refer to it as an adventure tour. So maybe if you like that framing, that's completely fine too. I'm going to share a story. I was reading, I don't know if you've ever read, so in the Hebrew Bible, the Christian Old Testament, the last 13 books, the last 13 chapters of Genesis, the story of Joseph. And so I'll also just say, we share universal teachings of truth. We're a yogic tradition here, and so we're not focusing on like doctrine, but we're focusing on the core spiritual principles that are shared in these teachings. And so the story of Joseph includes the mention of his dad. His dad is asked, "How old are you?" And his dad says, "I have this many years in my pilgrimage." And so that's another way, like this is your pilgrimage. And so if you like to frame it that way, a pilgrimage is a journey to awareness of the sacred in time and space, which is definitely what we're all inviting ourselves to remember. To remember the sacred is right here in time and space, and we can continually be in contact with that energy of the sacred in time and space. So we'll come back to that story, but I would like to share just a few teachings. This one is from Patanjali, and there are incredible teachings codified, collected under the name the Yoga Sutras from Patanjali, and it includes this particular teaching. So I'm going to share it in two translations. The first translation is this: abiding in generosity and honesty, material and spiritual prosperity is bestowed, which is fabulous, fabulous translation. So it just says, abiding in generosity and honesty, prosperity is bestowed. And then this morning, I looked back at the Sanskrit, and here's maybe an even more amazing translation, which is even more direct and literal from the Sanskrit. And it actually made me burst into tears. Abiding in generosity, all jewels appear. You can just feel the potency of that, can't you? So what that tells you is, abiding in generosity, all jewels appear. That's because the jewels are already here. And the jewels that appear when we abide in generosity, and we'll talk about generosity in a second, the jewels that appear in our lives, it includes material prosperity, but it's that energy of divine love. It's that energy of radiant beauty. It's that energy of light. It's that energy of playfulness. It's that energy of connection. And that nothing can take away from us. And so let's visit the story of Joseph a little bit. And this, again, I was just weeping this morning when I was reading it. It unfolds over 13 chapters. And so I'm inviting you to spend some time with this and keep meditating with it yourself. But Joseph is beloved by his father. And when Joseph is born, he's the youngest. And his dad gives him a beautiful coat.
Hello, I am Acharya Kashi, a spiritual teacher and a student of Swami Nityananda at Awake Yoga Meditation. If you love being inspired, uplifted, encouraged, and on fire for inner transformation, like, subscribe, and follow.
Sometimes it's translated as a beautiful robe. And Joseph's brothers are jealous of him, and they hate him, and they decide, what if we kill him? And then they say, well, no, let's not kill him. Let's just sell him into slavery in Egypt. Good idea. And so they strip the beautiful robe from their brother and sell him into slavery in Egypt and go back and show the robe, which they cover in animal blood, to their dad. And they say, guess what? And they let their dad think that their brother is dead when they themselves have sold Joseph into slavery in Egypt. But guess what happens next? Joseph abides in generosity and honesty, and material and spiritual prosperity is bestowed, even in slavery in Egypt. He abides in generosity, and all jewels appear. And so he prospers. He is given trust. He is given respect. He is given responsibility. He is given wealth. He is given treasure. Then he's falsely accused, and he's cast into prison. He still doesn't lose his composure. He still keeps abiding in generosity and honesty, and still material and spiritual prosperity unfolds for him in all conditions, because he knows that his beauty is not defined by that outer robe that was taken away from him. And he actually even knows, even in the face of unjust accusations, he knows that nothing can take away his wholeness, his honesty, his integrity. And so even when he's in prison, he shares the jewels of his being. And two people are there in prison with him. They have these dreams, and they ask Joseph, can you interpret these dreams? And Joseph says, great reply, by the way, in any circumstance, I can't, but God can. And then Joseph interprets the dreams. They turn out to be true. It's the divine speaking through Joseph that interprets the dreams. And one of the person who receives a favorable dream interpretation, which is you will be set free in 3 days, promises to remember Joseph, but alas, does not remember Joseph. So he's liberated from prison in 3 days, forgets all about Joseph. Joseph is still in prison. But then Pharaoh has a dream and is asking his cupbearer, can you interpret this dream? And the cupbearer says, no. And the Pharaoh asks everyone, can you interpret this dream? And everyone says, no. And then the cupbearer says, oh, I remember. Joseph interpreted a dream for me, and it turned out to be true. Joseph interpreted a dream for another person, and it turned out to be true. And so the Pharaoh invites Joseph in front of him and says, I had this dream. Can you interpret this dream? Remember the reply? Joseph says, I can't, but God can. And so Joseph interprets the dream, and the Pharaoh believes Joseph's interpretation of the dream and places Joseph in another position of trust and respect and responsibility and abundance and prosperity. And in the process of Joseph being placed in this position, Joseph ends up storing grain in times of plenty so that then there is still grain when famine comes. And in time, Joseph's erring brothers make their way in front of Joseph and say, we are starving. We need grain, or we will die. And Joseph recognizes them. They don't recognize him. He provisions them with grain, and he puts their silver back into the bags of grain. So he doesn't take any money for it. And they notice this when they get partway back, and they're actually quite concerned. They're like, why didn't he take our money? I'm a little alarmed and concerned that he didn't take our money. So he's abiding in this generosity. He's abiding in this prosperity, abiding in this abundance and this sharing in every single way. So they go back to their father, and Joseph has said, come back to me with your other brother, because not all of the brothers were there. And what happens, to make a long story short, is the brothers come back because the famine continues. They need to go back. They need to ask for more grain. And again, he recognizes them. He throws a feast for them, and he says, I'm your brother. Here I am. I recognize you. They're mildly terrified, but he wants to see his father. And so he invites his father to come, and actually all of their extended family to come. It ends up being about a total of 70 people to come, and to live in safety in that place in the time of famine. And there's an amazing exchange at the end of this. So again, it's kind of a saga, so I encourage you to go back and read it, meditate with it yourself. But at the end of this, Joseph's father leaves the body at a very ripe old age. And after Joseph's father leaves the body, Joseph's brothers are extremely concerned because they remember that they talked about killing him. They remember that they stripped his beautiful robe from him. They remember they were not right in relation to him, and they're terrified. They think he might judge us, he might scold us, he might punish us. And this is what Joseph said to his brothers. Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And this is a teaching for the ages, for all of us. And I'm inviting us to actually feel our way into the story now. The story is about us, every one of us. Every one of us has aspects of knowing that we are the beloved child, knowing that we are garmented in beauty, knowing that we are loved, knowing that we wear a robe of light and kindness and love and protection. Every one of us has aspects of ourselves that are capable of looking at another and experiencing hatred or jealousy if we allow ourselves to compare ourselves to another. Every one of us could potentially want to do that, want to strip the beautiful robe of light from another. And then every one of us, in some sense, has had the beautiful robe of light stripped from us by people who were acting in ignorance, who did not understand what they were doing. And every one of us, when the beautiful robe of light has been taken from us by other humans, is invited to do exactly as Joseph did, and to realize the light that is within me, none can deprive me of that. The love that is within me, none can take that away from me. The beauty and the strength and the courage and the generosity that is within me, that can never be separated from me. Even if I am separated from my home and my family, even if I am cast into an entirely new situation where I know no one, if I abide in this generosity of spirit, the divine will prosper me because I am connected to the divine. And when I remember my connection to the divine, when I remember I am robed by this garment of light, when I respect the light within myself, even in a situation that is foreign to me, even in a situation that is not my home situation, I will be met with respect because I am meeting myself with respect. I'm living in respect and awareness of that light that is within me. And so, of course, as generosity of spirit flows through me, material and spiritual prosperity will be here. Of course, as I practice generosity and honesty, all jewels appear, because the jewels are here within ourselves. And notice as well, if you look at the course of the story, it's not only once that Joseph has opportunity to practice this awareness. Then later he's unjustly accused and cast into jail. And so if we face misunderstandings, if we face calamities, if we face crisis, if we face things that are unfair, that are deeply uncomfortable, to still be aware that the divine is with us, no matter where we are, and to still practice that self-remembrance, to still know that the source of all jewels is here, even in this confined situation or circumstance in which we might find ourselves. Perhaps we're not literally incarcerated, but perhaps we find ourselves in a situation that feels confining in some way or limiting in some way. All jewels are still with us as we live in that prosperity, as we live in that abundance and generosity. And then also remember the I can't do this, but God can. So it's repeated 3 times in Joseph's story. Someone says, can you do this? And the answer always is, I can't, but God can. And so for each of us, whatever it is that we are loving ourselves forward through, I can't do it, but God can. Absolutely, God has got this. God is here for it. God is here exactly for this, to demonstrate that in impossible circumstances, of course God can do this. And so each of us is invited. I'm going to start to use some contemporary language, and please use the phrasing that resonates with you. But each of us is invited to remember, this is my way of putting into words, this is what Joseph knew. Only if Joseph knew this could he keep doing what he did. The divine is my source, the only force in my life and world. The divine has got this. So whatever it is that your phrasing is, if you prefer to use the word my higher self or light or God, whatever your word for that is, that has got this. So when you have that doubt, or when you have that attachment, or when you bump up against that limitation, or that painful memory, or that self-judgment, or that how can I love myself forward through this, the divine is my source. The divine is the only force in my life and world. The divine can do this. And then we open ourselves and allow ourselves to move beyond the human-created limits. And so I'm going to share with you again. I read this in our opening meditation, but I want to share one more time. This is from Swami Nityananda. It's deeply moving to me because he shared this outpouring with absolute sincerity at a time when his physical vehicle was facing enormous challenges. And so it was in the final months of his time in embodiment, and he opened his mouth and this truth poured forth. And like Joseph in these stories, he was just demonstrating we are not our physical vehicle. We are not defined by our human experiences. If our brother or our family or someone else decides that they hate us and despise us and want to treat us contemptuously and disrespectfully and abusively and wants to try to sell us into slavery, if we are unjustly accused and imprisoned, we can still move forward because the divine is our source. And the divine is the only force in our life and world. No matter what the outer circumstances are, no matter what the physical vehicle or the emotional human self is encountering, this is true. And so Swami Nityananda says this, and it's true, independent of what the physical vehicle is experiencing. It might make me cry. Remember what a magnificent being of light you are. Eternally adorned in the garment of radiant, pure consciousness, with a vesture of immortal beauty, holiness, and perfection, the handiwork of the beloved. So you are the handiwork of the beloved, always. No matter what any human has said to you that did not respect or remember or honor that, you are the handiwork of the beloved. Oh, what joy to discover I am whole. I am perfect. I am one with all beauty and life. I am the source of all blessings and achievements and fulfillments. I am one with the universe, and it contains eternal treasures in the storehouse of oneness. I am is ever ready to uplift, to heal, to prosper, to liberate, to play with me, when I am eager to let itself pour through me, and I no longer allow the human garment and ego consciousness to define me. And so every one of us, with absolute love, we are invited to turn within and to ask ourselves with honesty and good humor, have I been allowing the human garment and ego consciousness to define me? And if so, we are invited to shift our perspective, expand our awareness, and identify with this I am magnificent being of light presence that is within each of us always. And this is that garment of light that no human experience can ever take from us. And when we have that connection with that garment of life and that garment of light, then we know we are not limited to the human body. It's an amazing privilege, an amazing gift. I know it doesn't always feel that way to be here in time and space. So enjoy every single moment of it. And remember, it is a tour of service, an adventure tour, a pilgrimage, inviting you to see the sacred in time and space. Even if you live 110 years or 104 years, did you all see the 104-year-old woman skydiving? Yeah. So celebrated her 104th birthday with her second skydive. Her first skydive was on her 100th birthday. So no matter how long our journey in time and space is, it goes like that, even if it's 104 years, even if it's 106 years. And then I also just want to share with you, so sometimes we have friends and loved ones who leave early. From our perspective, it's really tragic. And it will be from the human perspective. From the human perspective, it will always seem like that 12-year-old left way too early. They didn't get to finish their life. That 20-year-old left way too early. They didn't get to finish that life. That 35-year-old left way too early. They didn't get to finish their life. From the human perspective, it always seems that way. From the perspective of the soul, please remember this. I'm going to use a metaphor. So tell me a city that it would be fun to fly to. Any city.
Honolulu.
Which one did you say? Bali. Wow, that would be fun to fly to Bali. Thank you. She said Honolulu, also fun. So this would be like if you had a friend who flew to Bali and you were so happy for your friend to fly to Bali, or you had a friend who wanted to fly to Honolulu and you were so happy for your friend to take that trip to Honolulu, and then your friend got back home and they said, oh, I'm really glad I went, but I'm really tired and I am so glad to be home. That's what it's like when we finish our tour of service. I'm really glad I went, and I am so glad to be home. So from the perspective of the soul, it is completely different. It is, that was an amazing tour of service, even if it was only 12 years, even if it was only 20 years, even if it was only 35 years, and I am so glad to be home. And enjoy every single moment that you are here. The other thing is that no matter what age people leave the physical, they continue to be with us. Their love, their strength, their support, their inspiration, their courage, their joy continues to be with us. And so our relationship doesn't end, it continues to unfold. It continues to be present with us. But know for sure, they are absolutely fine. They are better than fine. They are more themselves than ever before. They love us. They are aware of us. We will see them again and live out the fullness of your adventure tour, your tour of service, and your pilgrimage. Thank God, and God bless us all.